closed session, we get started. I can check with them if they're being judged. Probably not. That's why I'm top of judge.
Morning. Is the live stream going already?
Is there a live stream going?
Yes.
Yes.
For sure, maybe. Yeah, we'll wait until, we'll give it 2 minutes, 10:30 on the dot. There's extra water bottles back here, I've got it set up on the table for you. And if you need anything else, then. Julie.
Interviews are open to the general public. That clock is wrong. It's 1 minute from the 12. just on one side.
I would leave it open, I think, for the public comment, and then once we shift to the interviews, we'll close it in. Cool, it's 10:30. You want to start?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bo Duell. I'm General Counsel for Governor Katie Hobbs, and I have with me Corey Lorick, Deputy General Counsel, and Sean Barron, Senior Counsel in the Governor's Office. We're here today to interview applicants for the new judicial position created by the approval of the new 8th Division of the Yavapai County Superior Court. From 10:30 to 11:30, we'll be taking comment from members of the public as to any one of the 4 candidates that are being interviewed today. If you're here to provide public comment, we ask that each commenter begin by clearly stating your first and last name for the record, your city and county of residence, and the name of the applicant that you will be speaking about. And each commenter is limited to 5 minutes, and we'll be keeping time. We can get started and just have folks form a queue and come on up. I think you can sit in the candidate's chair during this public comment period so that you have the mic. This is being live streamed and recorded, and the mic will just allow us to get better audio quality. And Corey, Sean, and I will just sit up here and listen and observe, and we'll have this period open for the next hour. So if the first person wants to step up, we're ready to get started.
Good morning. My name is Penny, Pennie. Last name is Wambold, W-A, M as in Mary, B as in boy, O-L, D as in dog, T as in Tom. I'm a resident of Yavapai County. I've been here for 15 years, and I'm here today to speak about Judge Phelan. I met, well, first of all, I am an attorney. I've been practicing family and dependency law since 2004 in pretty much 10 of our 15 counties, but I've been in Yavapai for the last 15 years, as I said. I met Judge Phelan in this courtroom 13 years ago when we were both, at the time I was with the Attorney General's office representing DCS, and Judge Phelan was a contract attorney representing parents and children in dependency cases. And then I went to that side as well. So we argued against each other and been aligned representing families. When Judge Phelan went on the bench, well, before I talk about that, in the dependency court, typical Judge Phelan, she didn't just appear in court. She was a fierce advocate for families and for children, drove all over the state, probably out of state, to see children in foster care and represent them in the dependency process. She was also active with the court-appointed special advocates, the CASA program, the CODI program, where we teach dependent youths about the court system, and also with the Yavapai Family Advocacy Center. So she's been very involved in our community. On our application, it sets out a whole page of all the pro bono work she's done and the services she's been involved in for our community. I'm never this nervous in court. I don't know what the deal is, but sorry. Judge Phelan takes the role of a public servant very seriously. She's here to cover for anybody, despite her own busy criminal calendar. You know, she was on the family law bench for a while and did some civil work. She's always willing to help anybody else, and she has an amazing demeanor. She's wicked smart and always prepared as a lawyer, and I've heard nothing but good. I don't practice criminal, but nothing but good about her demeanor on the bench and her willingness to help others on the bench and in our community. She's also an amazing mom of 3 children that she and her husband did a great job. These very successful kids. The youngest one is going to be a senior this year. Of the applicants, she is by far the most experienced. She's been on the bench since 2019. At think she's definitely the most qualified, and if we're going to select somebody on the merits, it's definitely Judge Phelan. And so I'm hopeful that the governor will see how fabulous Judge Phelan is, and that she's already has her feet wet and is ready to jump in. And I think she deserves to be appointed to a division. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Ann Holdsworth. I am a resident of Yavapai County, and I am here to give my support for Attorney Lori Marshke. I am also an attorney here in Yavapai County. I've only been practicing for, 3 years, so I'm still a baby lawyer. But Lori, who works in my office, has been a great mentor to me. In fact, I constantly refer to her as my mentor because she provides so much guidance to me. She's definitely a measure twice, cut once type of attorney. Every work product that I see that crosses my desk that she's had a part of is nearly perfect. And if she's not fully familiar with a practice area or with an issue that we're trying to unravel, she puts in the time, she puts in the research, and she finds a good solution to whatever problem is before her. She's been stepping into the litigation sphere for the last several years now, and I am constantly impressed by how willing she is to step outside of her comfort zone and learn new things and take on new challenges. I think that we all know how scary it can be to take something new on, especially when you're in your career and you're comfortable. She has been very flexible, very quick to learn. And personally, if I had to appear before her as a judge, I know that she would look at it, at whatever issue was before her, impartially, with view on the facts and not the emotion. That is something that I really appreciate about Lori, is that she sees things as they are without the emotional factor in. Having that conversation with your clients when they are so emotionally invested in the matter that they've come to you for can be really difficult, but she is really good at navigating those really difficult conversations. Whenever I have a difficult client on the other end of the phone or on the other end of the desk, I always ask Lori to join me because she always has a good solution. I think Lori would make a great judge. She's level-headed, she's smart, she's fast, and she's a quick learner. So I enthusiastically endorse Lori Marshke for whatever my opinion counts for. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Waterhouse. I've been a resident of Yavapai County for the last 23 years. I'm a paralegal at the Holdsworth Law Firm, and I've been there since 2004. So I've known Lori since she started working next door in 2005. Lori then joined our firm, so I've been working with her since 2015. Lori is a constant inspiration to me. She is always encouraging me to try new things, to step out of my comfort zone, and she doesn't just throw me into the water. She stands there and she holds my hand and walks me through it while she's teaching me, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes when I work with attorneys now, because I've been a paralegal for quite some time, they're not as hands-on with me and they let me go off on my own. So I do appreciate the extra effort that she puts in with me. Because I've known her for so long, I raised my son right alongside me at the firm and her next door. And he is now in law school at U of A and relies heavily on Lori for her knowledge about law school, her knowledge about the law. He's interested in some of the areas that she's interested in, so they have a lot in common, and she's been quite helpful to him, getting him through his undergrad and then on to law school. So I say everything again that Annie said. I have the same experiences working with her as a person. She's really very kind and thoughtful and considerate. She's always doing that extra thing that you don't expect. You know, you show up and there's a little something on your desk to say thank you for helping me with the project or whatever it might be. She's just always very kind and helpful. So I can't say enough nice things about Lori, and I hope that she gets this position. Although I'd be disappointed because I wouldn't be working with her. But thank you.
If anyone is here to provide public comment on the 4 judicial applicants being considered for an appointment to the Yavapai County Superior Court, you can step up now.
As we can have people monitor if someone comes in, back out. It's that preference.
We can wait here for a little bit.
So for the applicants who are here to introduce take place at your scheduled time, the preference is that no applicant be present during another applicant's interview. Marshall that, Jeremy. Wield the big stick as we need. So I'm gonna go back to chambers. You guys need to hear.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Henry Edward Whitmer. I'm an attorney here. I've been one for about 10 years. I'm here to give my support to Judge Deb Phelan. Here's what I want to impart to you about Judge Phelan. I was there on her first day taking the bench as a prosecutor, and I have seen her since as a defense attorney. She is the very ideal of what a judge should be and what a judge is. She has a humanity and a humility that bridges the gap between this bench and that bench. I've represented the people and the person, and she gives fair consideration to both. The biggest worry that we as practitioners have is that you give this commission to someone who gets what I call robitis. That's the inflammation of the ego because they wear a black bathrobe to work. I know this myself because I'm a part-time pro tem in this county, and it is easy to fall into that trap. And that is the exact opposite of what Judge Phelan has done. She's not a judge who gets up there and thinks that she is an emperor. She's the person that gets up there and dutifully considers the law as it's written and as it should be fairly applied. She has no question or no problem asking questions of the litigants when a new issue comes up that she's not familiar with. And that is exactly what is appropriate when a judge judges. We do not become superhuman because we take a higher chair than everyone else in the courtroom. And I heartily and fully commend Judge Phelan for what she has done and what I hope she continues to do. You would be well served by appointing her to Division 8. But more importantly than that, the people, the citizens, practitioners, the plaintiffs, the respondents, the defendants, everyone who comes in front of her would be well served. And that is the very bottom line of what a judge should be and what Judge Phelan is. Thank you very much for your time. Please take my words under consideration. I appreciate you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good morning. Will you please state your first and last name clearly, your city and county of residence, and the name of the candidate that you're making a public comment in regards to?
Okay.
And then we're limiting each public commenter to 5 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. My name is Bob Gundacker. I'm from Prescott, Arizona, Yavapai County. I am one of the senior attorneys at the Yavapai County Public Defender's Office. I'm speaking in behalf of candidate Matt Cochran. I have known and worked with Mr. Cochran for about 18 years in multiple contexts. When I first started working with him, he was a Yavapai County deputy county attorney. So I dealt with him in cases from that side. I could tell his professionalism, his commitment to the profession, and his commitment to the law during that time, being on the opposite sides of the aisle from him. He then went into private practice. I dealt with him kind of as a peer during those years, and I saw the same things from his devotion to his cases, his devotion to his clients, his still commitment to the law and to the profession. I've been an attorney 29 years, practiced my entire time in Arizona. I did start in Maricopa County as a deputy county attorney there, and then I was in private practice, and I've handled cases in multiple counties in Arizona. I know many attorneys who've been licensed in Arizona, and so I kind of know where Mr. Cochran fits in the spectrum of things, and it is refreshing to know another attorney who is committed to the profession, is committed to the rule of law, is committed to fairness and justice, and I don't always see that on either side. And so it is refreshing to know and work with Mr. Cochran. I've worked with him in the Public Defender's Office for over 10 years now, seen him in the capacity of a trial attorney and as a supervisor in the office. So I know his professionalism from that level. In my years of being an attorney, I've developed a philosophy on what it takes to be a good judge. And that is a commitment to the knowledge of the law, a commitment to work hard and apply that law, and the ability to have a judicial demeanor to work with the parties to bring about fair resolutions of the case. And I can tell you that that is true. All of those characteristics are true of Mr. Cochran. Always when we change roles in a profession, that the role itself changes us. So we have to do the best we can to predict how a person would move from attorney to judge. My estimation of Mr. Cochran is that he would do an excellent job from the bench, that his philosophy of life and of the law would impact, I think, positively as a judge. I think from a political perspective, I mean, that always affects us. But I think it really, from Mr. Cochran, it really doesn't matter. He's going to do a good job. He's going to be fair to both sides, regardless of those issues. And I really can't say much higher than him. I've worked with him on death penalty cases. I've done a death penalty trial with him. So I've sat 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3-4 months at a time with him and worked along with him in that capacity. It's a pleasure and it's a challenge. So I can't do anything more than heartily recommend Mr. Cochran for the position of the bench in Yavapai County Superior Court. I don't know if you have questions, but that's what I'd say. Thank you.
Good morning. We still have about 15 minutes left of the public comment period. So if folks who just came in would like to make a public comment, you're welcome to come up to the microphone at this table here.
I'll get you guys. I had a feeling. You guys don't want donuts, so I see. You've already pounded your donuts.
Good morning. I just wanted to announce that we have about 6 minutes left of the public comment period. So if you just stepped in and would like to make a public comment in support of any of the candidates being interviewed today for the judicial position, please step on up to this chair up here and make use of the time that we have left. After that, at 11:30, we'll start with our first interview. Okay. Good morning again, everyone. The time is now 11:30 almost. We're about ready to start with our first interview of Deborah Phelan. If you're here in the courtroom, you can step up to the chair. In fairness to all of the interviewees, we ask that any of the other candidates being interviewed step outside during others' interviews. So if there's any candidates we don't know people's faces yet, if you could please step outside during others' interviews, that would be appreciated. And Ms. Phelan, we're ready to get started whenever you are.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Thank you so
Welcome to
much.
Prescott.
Thank you. It's lovely here, much cooler than in Phoenix, so we were happy to get out for a day. We introduced ourselves at the beginning, but we'll do that again. My name is Bo Duell. I'm Governor Hobbs' General Counsel.
My name is Corey Lorg. I'm the Deputy General Counsel.
I'm Sean Parents. I'm Senior Counsel.
Ms. Phelan, we have a list of questions that we'll be going through with all of the interviewees today, and Corey will start with the first one, but we're just looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more today so we can brief the governor on how these all went.
Thank you. All right, so the first question, why are you applying for this position? I'm applying for this position because I would like to serve in a constitutionally created division. I'm currently the Judge Pro Tem A here in Yavapai County, and I've been serving in that role since January of 2019. I have served on all the different dockets in the Superior Court. When I started, I was assigned in Camp Verde, which means I drove an hour, which maybe from Phoenix, that's not a big deal, but in Prescott, that's a long commute. It's 50 miles to the Camp Verde courthouse. So I drove that every day. And I was assigned to the domestic, civil, probate, and juvenile calendar there in Camp Verde. And I handled very busy docket there. I did that for just under 2 years. And then I transferred here to Prescott. And since that time, I've handled the therapeutic courts and the adult criminal felony calendar. So here in Yavapai, pro tems serve every other capacity as an elected judge would. There's a few differences. The reason I'm applying for this position is I would like to be able to be utilized differently and more fully by the presiding judge. One of the things that I currently cannot do as a pro tem is if on my current assignment, criminal, once the state files a notice of intent to seek the death penalty, because I'm a pro tem, that case then transfers to one of the elected judges handling criminal. I would like to be able to serve more fully and be able to handle all the cases assigned to me on that docket. Another function I would hope to serve in, if I am a constitutionally created division judge, is to serve as a presiding judge over a certain discipline. Currently and traditionally in Yavapai County, discipline presiding judges are elected judges. So for my presiding judge, when he's looking at shifting things or moving things, or if there's a role that needs to be filled, as a pro tem, I'm not considered for that kind of a leadership assignment. I'm not able to do that at this time. If I were the Division 8 judge, I could do that, and I could serve the citizens of the county as well as my presiding judge and my bench a little more fully if I was a constitutionally designed judge. Another reason I'm applying for this is because as a pro tem, our funding is renewed every year on the fiscal calendar. As a constitutionally created judge, we would serve for that elected term. So those are really the main reasons I'm seeking this position as the Division 8 judge.
So can you tell us about a significant case you handled, either as an attorney or a judge pro tem, for which you're particularly proud of the work that you did and why?
Yes. May I share an attorney case that I handled as well as a judge? All right. I'll start with, as an attorney, I handled family law, juvenile law, and worked with a lot of clients that had significant mental health issues, substance abuse issues, domestic violence, victimization, a lot of those kinds of issues. And I did that for many years here in our county. One of the cases that I'm particularly proud of was a dependency case, and my client was challenged. She had a lot of issues, and her child was in DCS custody. And I worked with her a lot on trying to do what she could to get her child back. She was not able to do that. And so at the end of her case, she knew that she was not going to be able to get her child back and that she was facing termination. And for that particular client, really her issue was she wanted to be able to address the court and kind of speak what she felt about the case. And so for her, I suggested that instead of going through a trial, what we could do is ask that, at that time, our juvenile judge, if this young lady could make a statement to the court instead of the trial. And the judge granted her that ability. This young lady was not able to, she didn't have the skills to do that on her own. So my idea was, I told her I would meet her at the courthouse and we would sit down and I would work with her on preparing that statement. And so I sat with her and typed out her thoughts and typed it up into a pleading, and I filed that with the court. So we had her termination hearing scheduled. And just before that, I got notified by the bar that I was receiving the top pro bono attorney at the state bar convention for that year. It was 2017. The problem was her severance hearing was the same date as the awards ceremony. And for me, I appreciate the recognition, but it was more important to me to be at that hearing with my client. I didn't feel right asking to continue because she was emotionally prepared for the termination of her parental rights that day. I didn't feel comfortable having someone cover because I was her lawyer and I had appeared with her and I had that relationship with her. So I notified the bar and asked them to just mail me thank them for the award, asked them to mail it to me. And I went to that hearing with my client and I was with her when her rights were severed. And I read her statement to the court for her. And for me, I was really proud of that because that showed to me and to my client where my priorities were and still are. And it's not in the recognition or anything about that. It's in serving the public and serving my clients. So I'm really proud. And I recently saw her and she's doing well. So I'm really proud of that case. On the bench, one of the cases I've handled, of which I'm quite proud of my work, was a criminal case that I handled recently. And what was difficult about that case were the facts of that case. It was a driver who was impaired and had, because of his impairment, killed 2 children. And he was found guilty. And for sentencing, the range was enormous as far as what he could be sentenced to for prison. Oftentimes on the criminal bench as a judge, the range is limited by either the plea agreement or the statute itself limits the range. We have some ability within the range, but it's not a huge range. For this case, it was essentially as low as 12 years in prison or the rest of the defendant's life. And that was a hard decision to make. The statutes outline what we consider aggravation, what we consider mitigation. And so we have some directive from the legislature as to how we reach the decisions we make. But the statute doesn't tell us how much weight to assign to those different factors. And so for me, that was a difficult decision. Where do you find the justice when you have someone facing the rest of their life dying in prison, but you also have a family who lost 2 children? So that was a hard decision to make, and I had to make sure that my decision was correct under the law, weighing the factors, assigning the weight that I felt was appropriate, and rendering a sentence that was fair and was just for everyone involved. And so I'm particularly proud of my work in that case.
Thank you. What improvements, if any, do you think should be made to the overall organization or operation of the Yavapai County Superior Court?
I would say our court is run very efficiently, very well. We have a lot of excellent programs here in our court. And my presiding judge is here.
I'll leave with this question. Yeah.
I'll also say I'm proud of the work we do. And I've been part of that work since I've joined the bench and helped with that work as an attorney. We offer a lot of programs, and access to justice here in Yavapai County is very open. I think to improve efficiency, we could restructure some of our caseloads as far as judicial officers, and I know that's one thing that we are planning to do with this creation of Division 8. That additional constitutional division based on our population, I think will help us align assignments with judicial officers that can be more expedient and be able to adjudicate cases a little more efficiently. I think the opening of our new criminal justice center, where we are going to be moving the 2 trial divisions, myself and the other criminal trial judge from Prescott will be moving over there. We have the connection center where people can go right across the street from the courthouse to the connection center and get those services started. I think that alone, the physical location of that facility, as well as the 2 criminal judges being there, will allow for us to be more efficient in our administration of justice here in Yavapai County. I think we could also create some additional therapeutic courts. One, I think that would be particularly helpful would be a restitution court to help victims obtain restitution from defendants without that issue being forgotten and kind of set on the back burner. I think that would create a little more efficiency in our system.
Thank you.
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do if there's a potentially dispositive issue that hasn't been addressed by either party?
Well, I think it depends on the assignment and the docket on which you serve. So if there's a dispositive issue that has not been addressed as a judicial officer, if it's in a jury trial, I would probably have the attorneys approach and have a bench conference about it. I would feel an obligation to at least raise it. I think in any assignment, I would raise the issue and pose an inquiry to the parties if anyone intended to address the issue, or if making sure that it's not an oversight. And I think it's important if it is a dispositive issue to raise it, but how I raise it would, I think, be what would require a little bit of discernment on the judge's part. If it's 2 litigants in a family law case and there's an issue and they're self-represented, I think there's a way that the judge could raise that before the litigants and have them address it. But it really depends on what assignment I would have as to how I would address it. But I would certainly raise it to invite the parties to address the issue and provide me their argument on it.
If you could get the Arizona Supreme Court to reconsider any decision, what would it be and why?
One issue that I would like to see, and this isn't a direct answer to your question, reconsider. There was a recent appellate court decision that came out that I would like the Supreme Court to take and address. And it was a recent decision on the Medical Marijuana Act and the interpretation of the expungement provision and the language. When I read the decision, it was a little more broad than I would have interpreted that statute. I typically interpret statutes for the language that is in there and that it was intentionally written the way it is. And if something's missing, I wouldn't interpret it broadly to include that. And the recent case, it intended, in my reading, to include some language that's not in the statute. So I would love to see the Supreme Court take that case and rule on it, one, for that interpretation issue, but also because there's a lot connected to the Proposition 207 that needs to be resolved with finality. So I would like the Supreme Court to take that case.
Can you identify a court rule, whether civil, criminal, local, or otherwise, that you think should be revisited or changed, and why?
Can you ask me the question again?
Can you identify a court rule? It can be civil or criminal, it can be local or federal, that you think should be revisited or changed, and why?
Yes, so in the criminal rules, so I'm on the criminal docket, so those come to mind a little quicker. One of the rules that I would like to be changed is the rule on bond, on whether someone is eligible for bond. The bond eligibility criminal rule doesn't match exactly with the constitutional language. It's rule 7 point, I can't remember the rule. But there's a discrepancy between the rule, the statute, and the Constitution. And that was an issue that was before me in one of my early criminal cases when I started on the criminal bench. And I actually issued a ruling on the bench, having the attorneys brief that issue. And after I issued that ruling, it just bothered me a little bit. I kept rereading it, and I thought, there's an inconsistency among those 3 that we, as the attorneys and myself, did not address. So I asked the attorneys to, even though I had made a ruling, I reconsidered my ruling on my own, asked them to brief that discrepancy, and then had a further argument on it, and then issued a ruling that was slightly different than my first But there is that discrepancy among those three controlling authorities, and I think that that rule could use some tweaking and revision to make it match a little more closely the Constitution.
If you're able to describe it really briefly and succinctly, how did you end up reconciling those discrepancies across those three sources of law?
What I ended up doing was ruling that based on the Constitution, the defendant was eligible for a bond. The prior court, in our court, criminal cases earlier assigned to one judge, and then they'll shift to the trial judge, myself, and the other trial division. And the earlier judge had held that this defendant was not eligible for bond. And so on my reading, I felt that the Constitution dictated that he was eligible for a bond, and so I set a bond.
Thank you.
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do to prepare and get up to speed when you are assigned to a rotation covering an area of law with which you might have none or very little prior experience?
Well, I can answer that with what I have done. I don't have to philosophically say what I would do. I have been assigned, like I said, in a very busy civil, probate, juvenile calendar, as well as family. I was familiar with family, I was familiar with juvenile, I was not as familiar with civil. I was somewhat familiar with probate. How I prepared for that was I read the rules. I sat down with my rule book, I read the rules. For each discipline, there are different rules, as you know, and so I read all the rules for each of my disciplines. I also went to other senior judges who have served in those capacities, and the bench has a lot of scripts that are available for different routine hearings, protective orders, injunctions, things like that. So I got those scripts and read through the statutes. And fortunately for me, I have practiced such a wide variety of areas of law that I had some familiarity with all of them. So I simply studied the rules, read the statutes, was familiar with much of what I was doing. And for the things with which I was not as familiar, I feel like I gave those some extra study to prepare for those. When I then moved to the criminal bench, I was not familiar with criminal. I followed that same process. I read the criminal rules. I read the statutes that apply. I went through, at that time, I had new judge orientation, so I went through the handout materials that we had received for those. And then I spent some time visiting with the presiding judge of that discipline to really be ready for that rotation. But in our bench, assignments shift, assignments move, and fortunately, we are all very seasoned in helping in other disciplines. And based on my practice areas and things that I had done as an attorney, I'm very versatile and still continue to be able to serve, handling orders of protection, handling emergency domestic orders. Even though I'm on the criminal bench, I can do all of those sort of functions here in the court.
Could you please tell us about a time that you experienced conflict or disagreement with someone in the workplace? What was the situation, and what steps did you take to resolve it or move past the issue?
Conflicts in the workplace, so that's the question? I never had a conflict with Judge Napper. I have to say I've not had a lot of conflicts in the workplace. I will say as a judge, since I've been a judge, I've had to resolve issues with staff. And when that has occurred, I have sat down and discussed the issue with the staff member, expressing my concern. And sometimes it's involved writing up a memo of understanding, which we do through the county policies and procedures, addressed it. I know early on in my assignment in the Verde, I did have an issue, I addressed it. And after addressing it, this particular staff person kept apologizing, was very remorseful. And I said, it's done, we've resolved it, we've talked about it, let's move forward. And we did. But I absolutely have had issues that have had to be addressed, nothing huge, but I've been able to sit down, have a face-to-face talk about the issue, take any administrative measures that were appropriate, and then just move forward.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, I would like to convey just a few points. First, I know you've reviewed my application. I would just like to direct your attention to the public service that I have done, not only as an attorney, but as a judge. This function that I serve right now as a judge pro tem, it allows me to serve the community. And I've kind of gone through the reasons why I'm trying to move from a judge pro tem to the constitutionally created Division 8 judge. So I don't want to reiterate those points, but I would hope that to the governor and as well as to her staff here today, that it would be meaningful. My public service stretches back to college, so 30 years ago, serving as a crime victim advocate, crisis scene counselor. In law school, I was a court-appointed special advocate. I did a lot of pro bono work while in law school. The whole time I've been an attorney, I have done all sorts of public service in local schools, teaching character counts, serving in the community as Cub Scout leader, PTA person, on my neighborhood HOA. When I moved to the bench, I now serve on the committee with the Supreme Court regarding domestic violence in the courts, the COPE committee, the committee on probation education. All of those things I do and have done, not to try and earn recognition for it, but just because I believe that's what we should be doing as public servants. Give back to the community, educate the community, and provide this legal knowledge we have to benefit others. So I hope that my application reflects that I've done extensive public service work and will continue to do that. And my hope is that as a division, constitutionally created division judge, that I can have more of a leadership role here in the court and in the community and be able to expand kind of the outreach that we are doing through our strategic plan here at the court, that being engaged in the community, getting out into the community and helping to instill and protect the community's view of the independence, the integrity of this court. I think that's important to me, and I hope that my application reflects that. So that's what I would also like to offer for your consideration, to relay that to the governor. I've also done a lot of work in public law, dependency work, juvenile work, criminal work. When I was an elder law attorney working with access and the benefits through Altex, securing benefits for people through the VA, that's kind of been my commitment, is serving the community through those that can't protect themselves, those that need access and understanding of our public benefit systems. So that knowledge that I bring to the bench and that experience has been really helpful and invaluable to me as serving as a judicial officer here in the Yavapai County.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for your diligence and attention throughout this whole process, and for your contributions to the legal profession and the community here in Yavapai County. We will be in touch with each of the interviewees individually with follow-up information as soon as we can.
Great, thank you for your time. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You want to wait to the exact time?
I think we can. This Matthew Cochran here?
We'll see, you'll see your list.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us a little early.
Oh, no problem.
My name is Bo Dole. I'm Governor Hobbs' General Counsel. Of
Corey Lorg. I'm the Deputy General Counsel.
And I'm Sean Behrens, I'm Senior Counsel.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much for being here. We have a list of questions that we're going through with each of the interviewees, and we look forward to getting to know you a little bit more today.
Okay.
Corey, we'll start with the first one.
Great. Please tell us why you're applying for this position.
Well, I think the first reason I'm applying for the position is just to continue my career in terms of service. You heard from Mr. Gundecker earlier, I was a prosecutor and certainly served the people of Yavapai County there. I went into private practice for a little bit. Lots of reasons, I kind of ended that. The business end was not so much fun. But while I was there, I also had a contract with the Public Defender's Office and still was providing that service, and I really enjoyed that. So eventually I went to the Public Defender's Office, continued the idea of serving the public. And this is, to me, the next step in that progression and continuing to serve the people of Yavapai County. Additionally, I think being a judge increases, but is a new challenge. I've been doing criminal litigation for a very long time, 20 some years. And going to the bench will provide new intellectual opportunities for me, continue to challenge myself, potentially learn different areas of law that I haven't practiced in yet, and create that challenge and just continuing that. Again, being able to do that and continuing service is very interesting to me.
Can you tell us about a significant case you handled for which you're particularly proud of the work that you did and why?
Well, whenever I get asked that question, I kind of go back to my capital trial. The team and I all worked very hard in providing the best defense for that client. The challenge of building a guilt-phase defense, building mitigation, being prepared for that phase was quite challenging. It was the first capital case that I had worked on that went to trial. So that was a brand new experience for me. And I was proud of the work that we did. And I do believe we found the best arguments for that client. Unfortunately, that client did end up getting the death penalty. And certainly that was hard, but I don't think that takes away from the amount of work and pride I had in myself and the teammates in terms of the work we did on that case.
Thank you. What improvements, if any, do you think should be made to the overall organization or operation of the Yavapai County Superior Court?
I think one of the big things is, and I know things are in the works on this in terms of some of the meetings the committee is on, is a better way to deal with the mentally ill. I think the country does, but certainly I know Yavapai County has a significant mental health problem. And right now, unfortunately, the big catch-all is the criminal justice system. And as the criminal justice system between the prosecution, defense, and the court do the best they can to deal with the mental health situations that arise, it is not the best place to deal with them. And I know mechanisms are in place and ideas are going around about judges to deal specifically with mental health and have a more focus on that. I think the big benefit of that would be a little bit of money towards mental health may save a lot more money when dealing with the inefficiencies of the criminal justice system and its ability to deal with mental health within that context.
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do if there's a potentially dispositive issue that hasn't been addressed by either party?
That's a tough one. I mean, one option is certainly ask the litigants, you haven't addressed this issue. What are your thoughts on this? I'd probably lean more towards that, saying, this is out there, particularly when you're dealing with people representing themselves, whether it be the civil context, and obviously a lot more in the family law context. They don't know. And they're trying to do the best they can, and sometimes they need some guidance from the court in terms of, well, we need information on this area. What about that? Or
potentially even asking witnesses questions because you need to make a finding in a certain area, and people representing themselves don't know they need to ask those questions.
If you could get the Arizona Supreme Court to reconsider any decision, what would it be and why?
To me, I think that would be a line of cases. I think Judicial and Smith are some of them about capital jury selection. There's some more cases that kind of flowed from those that talk about questioning of prospective jurors about mitigating factors that they're in their consideration of them in capital jury selection. There's some federal case law. There's a great district court opinion that a federal trial judge wrote out of the Northern District of Iowa that really kind of summarizes a lot of things. That really limits the ability for defense counsel to ask those questions. Kind of federally, the quote unquote stakeout question is a little more narrow. The Judicial and Smith cases kind of broaden what a stakeout question is. When a defense counsel is trying to see if someone's quote unquote mitigation impaired. Is there some statutory mitigator in the capital statute that they just couldn't potentially consider as mitigating? So that would be the line of cases that if that were, if I was king for the day, so to speak, I would want to overturn and find a different way to analyze that.
Thank you. Can you identify a court rule, whether it's civil, criminal, local, or statewide, that you think should be revisited or modified, and why?
For me, there's a statute, and then there's a corollary rule in the rules of criminal procedure about defendants who their absence causes sentencing to happen more than 90 days after the finding of guilt. They waive their right to appeal. Certainly, a person can waive a right, but I see potential dangers in that of significant errors at trial not being able to be addressed on appeal. And if the idea is justice, shouldn't we welcome the review of the Court of Appeals in a case?
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do to prepare and get up to speed when you are assigned to a rotation covering an area of law with which you have no or very little prior experience?
First, it's about getting the nose to the grindstone, so to speak. You gotta put the time and the work in to learn the relevant rules, relevant statutes, find the significant case law. Knowing this being a small town and knowing the other judges, the judges on the court, I know they'd be more than willing to help with that. Hey, you need to look at this, you need to look at that. And in some ways, with very experienced attorneys in front of you, depending on the calendar and the case, asking pertinent questions about the case law, asking and using them as a resource to find things that necessarily in your own research you didn't find. So studying the case law, asking questions of other judges, making sure there's good questioning of attorneys that appear in front of you, and just bringing that all together and making sure you've reviewed the file. What have you anticipated in that case coming up? Reading the prior pleadings and knowing the issues that are in play.
Could you please tell us about a time that you experienced a conflict or a disagreement with someone in the workplace? What was the situation? And what steps did you take to resolve it or move past the issue?
I kind of go back to the capital case. I mean, everyone, there's 3 attorneys on the case and we all have our own opinions. And there are certain disagreements that, to say it was a conflict, I don't know about, that can be a harsh word, but there's certainly some significant disagreements about it. And we talked it out, talked about the issue, talked about the strategy. And ultimately, I was not the first chair on that case. Ultimately, it's the first chair's call, and that attorney made the call. And Mr. Gundacker and I did our part in, going with that strategy and doing it to the best of our ability.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Just that I'm someone who works hard. I work hard representing people. Currently, I believe in working hard, and that's something I'll bring to the bench. I feel I am ready to take the bench, to make the calls versus being an advocate, that I have the trial experience to be able to sit at trial, listen to evidence, make the calls on objections, whether they be sustained or not. Quickly, there's nothing that replaces trial experience in terms of doing trials. I've done, if I remember the number right, around 50 felony jury trials. I'm very good at making quick decisions and moving and helping move cases along. And I'm ready for this challenge, and I'm ready to continue to serve the people of Yavapai County.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and diligence throughout this process and for your contributions to the legal profession here and to the community in Yavapai County. We will be in touch with each of the interviewees personally to let them know about next steps as soon as we can, hopefully by the end of the week.
Okay, thank you so much. Nice meeting you all.
On the next interview there. Is this Saturday the next interview or is it March?
Afternoon.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. We're doing the interview of Lori Marshke for the Yavapai County Superior Court appointment. My name is Bo Duell, General Counsel for Governor Hobbs.
I'm Corey Lorick, I'm the Deputy General Counsel.
Nice to meet you.
Sean Behrens, I'm Senior Counsel on the GCT.
Nice to meet you.
We have a list of questions that we'll be going through with each interviewee today, and we look forward to getting to know you a little bit more. Corey will start with the first question.
Why are you applying for this position?
I would have to say that I'm applying for this position because it would allow me to take what I have learned and practiced in the private sector for the last 18 years and bring it to the public sector. And by doing so, I would be able to bring my career full circle back to what originally interested me and made me passionate about the law. And what I'm talking about is when I was back in college, I was able to major in law and social issues, where I could study the legal system's potentially disparate impact on different social groups of people. And so from there, I developed a passion for always looking for fairness and equality in the law. And a position on the bench is really being on the front lines of being able to ensure that that fairness and equality is afforded to all people, no matter their social group.
Can you tell us about a significant case you handled for which you're particularly proud of the work that you did and why?
Sure. There have been several cases that I've been particularly proud of. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily a case where I helped my client gain the most money or, did something of that nature. Probably the case I'm most proud of is a case that I had where there was an elderly woman who was taken advantage of by her handyman. And she had basically been persuaded to invest her life savings into purchasing a house. And unbeknownst to her, that handyman had drafted a trust that would take title to this property and had given himself an 85% interest in the property. And even added provisions that he was to receive a fee for work that he did on the house, and she was to pay all the expenses. And so it was very troubling that this woman who had lived alone and had trusted this person and had gained a friendship with this person was now in a position where she was going to be left with nothing. And so having the ability to advocate for her, for someone who couldn't advocate for herself, was very satisfying. It was a little bit difficult. We did run into some issues. The handyman man wasn't all that cooperative and tried to evade service and do whatever he could, but eventually he was able to get counsel. We were able to work it out, and I got my client back her life savings.
What improvements, if any, do you think should be made to the overall organization or operation of the Yavapai County Superior Court?
I would say that ensuring that we move things along in a timely manner is particularly important, given that sometimes our participants like to wait until there's a deadline before they take the next step. And so I'm thinking back to something I saw Judge Knepper do fairly recently, that was to set out some interim orders before the next hearing that could be met to keep the parties on track. So it was not just a matter of let's go ahead and set out the next hearing. It was, I want certain things done by this date, by this date, by this date, so that by the time we got to our next hearing, it was more productive.
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do if there's a potentially dispositive issue that hasn't been addressed by either party?
I think I would ask for some clarification, pointing out we have this issue in front of us, and ask for input from both parties. I think that giving people the opportunity to understand what I'm looking at and giving them that opportunity to say what they want to say and advocate for their position is important. And so if it's an issue that really hasn't been looked at before, or I haven't gotten all the information for the participants, I would certainly give them the opportunity to bring that forward to me.
If you could get the Arizona Supreme Court to reconsider any decision, what would it be and why?
I wouldn't say I necessarily have any particular case that I would say has to be overturned. I mean, everything is on a case-by-case basis. Everything has to be looked at with the particular circumstances of the case. And so that decision may be correct in that particular circumstance with those set of facts. They may be different in another case. And so I would not be able to advocate for a particular change unless I knew the facts of the case that were being considered.
Thank you. Can you identify a court rule, it can be civil or criminal, local or statewide, that you think should be revisited or modified, and why?
I think that the standing court order that some of the Yavapai County judges have should probably be codified into our rules. And what I'm talking about is the ability to submit documents to each other via email. I know there's a lot of participants, not just our attorneys here, but some pro se litigants that often will have a hard time knowing how many copies they have to send out and what their deadline is and getting it out in the right manner. And so making it easier for people to participate in the legal system, I think is important, and having that standing order where if they need to participate via email, it would make it easier for them.
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do to prepare and get up to speed when you are assigned to a rotation covering an area of law with which you have no or very little prior experience?
Sure. It's actually something that I really like to do. I find myself going down the rabbit hole, so to say, when something comes up in our office, which it often does. We don't do just one thing. Not one thing comes through our office, although right now we're primarily doing probate and estate planning. All of these clients have issues that come up along the way. And I'm thinking back to one of the first days I was working at Holdsworth Law Firm, and I was asked to look at an issue that was a maritime law issue. Not like I ever expected to be researching maritime law in Arizona, but that's what I was tasked to do. So I went down that rabbit hole, of course, starting with a Google search. Let me just understand where maritime law is. Where is it I can go find the resources and the law on these issues? And how do I focus my search to understand how I narrow down what it is I'm looking for and how I can answer that question?
Could you please tell us about a time that you experienced a conflict or a disagreement with someone in the workplace? What was the situation, and what steps did you take to resolve it or move past the issue?
Sure. So I haven't had necessarily a lot of conflict with my colleagues or coworkers. I think in the workplace, the conflicts that I face at times are issues with clients. And what I have found is that I need to do a couple of things. I need to set expectations up front so that we can avoid conflicts and bad feelings later on. And I also need to adapt to what the client's needs and wants are. I'm thinking back to a particular instance where I had just come off of 10 years working at Greg Huber's office, where we're a boutique law firm. We're representing primarily big developers and commercial real estate and financing transactions. And I started at Holdsworth Law Firm, where I started representing more small business clients. And I got one of my first assignments, and that was to produce it was a business related document. And I was so psyched for that. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I've been doing that for years. I was going to produce the absolute best document this client had ever seen. And I produced it and got done, and the client was not happy. It was much more than the client expected. The client was looking for something very basic, something very simple, and it was overdone for what they were looking for. And so tying back again to expectations, I start out now with asking them more questions about what it is they're looking for. I often have a phrase that I use. I say to them, do you want the Cadillac version or do you want the Honda Civic version? And explain to them what that is. And 9 times out of 10, if they're a small business owner and they are mindful of expenses, they want the Honda Civic version. And so I've had to adapt my way of doing things for what the client's needs are, so as to avoid those potential conflicts going forward.
Thank you so much. That was the last of our questions. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I would certainly like to talk a little bit about what I understand the most important aspect of being on the bench is, and my experience with that. One of the things that I think is most important is the ability to change gears from our thinking as practicing attorneys and being a zealous advocate to being impartial. And what I have been doing for the last 8 years, I think has given me the experience to do that. They have the saying, the best way to learn is through teaching. And in my line of practice, I represent many, many people in probates and trust administration cases. And in most of those cases, I'm representing the court-appointed personal representative or the trustee in the trust administration case. And of course, in both of those roles, my clients have fiduciary duties. And so I've spent 8 years now trying to advise and counsel and teach my clients how to think and how to make decisions on an impartial basis. And so I think having that experience is something that I'd be able to bring with me to the bench.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and diligence through this process and for all of your contributions to the legal profession and to the community here in Yavapai County.
Great, thank you.
Well, one of us will be in touch with you, hopefully by the end of the week, with information about any next steps.
Fantastic, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks.
We're a bit really savage, I think. What time is she sitting? You guys want to take a break?
We'll take a quick break and come back. The last candidate, Dana Lynn Savage, is not scheduled until 1 p.m. We're running a bit ahead of schedule. So if she comes early, we'll get started. Otherwise, we'll be prepared to resume at 1.
Yep. Thank you. Yes. Oh, really?
Yes. It's just like prosecutor. Yeah. Yeah. Really? Wow. Okay. They are. Sometimes there's also who are raising out a name. Yeah. Yeah. Nice seeing you. Good seeing you. Good luck. What's that? Yeah, you know, all right. Nobody needs to run. How are you? Good, how are you? This is most of the show. You know, the last one, just did most of it. Very well done. Yeah. Well played. Pretty close to him. Right? So, it's massive. So, so hard experiments software is all day long. She speaks Spanish. Does speak German. Does speak good thing, just option. I really agree that. Well, if you want me to okay on the circumstances, anyways. It's fun. It's like watching. It's fun. So we out. most of the practice that is kind of. Yeah, right. I'm encouraging you to make that call. Remember that all? Are they all in the church?
They all blend together. Everyone's angry.
Yes, they're.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you guys today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. A little nervous, but you know.
Will be nice. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bo Dole. I'm the Governor's General Counsel.
I'm Corey Lorick, I'm the Deputy General Counsel.
Okay.
I'm Sean Behrens, I'm Senior Counsel.
Nice to meet you.
We have a list of questions that we have gone through with all the other interviewees, and we'll go through with you as well. And we look forward to just getting to know you a little bit more today.
All right. Thank you.
And Corey's going to start off with the first question.
Great, please tell us why you are applying to this position.
I am applying because I believe that I would be a good judge. I'm patient. I'm good at what I do. I have I love the law. Honestly, I love being a prosecutor, but I have found that I want to do more. I want to learn more. I want to be on the bench and to be able to make decisions, help in making the right decisions in cases, and just be another person who can do the right thing. I believe that doing the right thing and following the law and just doing the right thing, no matter what that is, even if it's a hard decision, is incredibly important.
Can you tell us about a significant case you handled for which you're particularly proud of the work that you did, and why?
I had a case, I think it was in 2019. I've been handling juvenile cases for about 5.5 years now, and it was a 3-code juvenile case. They broke into the Chino Valley High School and did some significant damage to the gym floor. The resolution of the case was relatively, I want to say simple, but that wasn't the hard part of the case. The harder part of the case was the fact that we had $120,000 in restitution that was requested, and then and being challenged. And so I had to spend a significant amount of time going through the documentation and understanding the ins and outs of gym floors and how wooden floors and gym floors are replaced and how they can be repaired and when they can and can't be repaired. So I had to meet with the senior, I believe his title was a senior insurance adjuster, in order to talk through what his job was, what his tasks were, and how they went through the process methodically, and then talk to the floor expert and learn everything that you need to know about replacing a gym floor, how detailed it is, how, in order to ensure the floor, you have a lot of steps you have to go through. And so in preparing for that restitution hearing, I had to do a lot of work, and then a lot of extra work, more than most normal cases, juvenile cases, because we don't normally have that much restitution in cases. And then the hearing was between a day and a half and 2 days. We did all of the evidence on a Friday and oral arguments on Monday, and then had the judge's ruling. But then after that, I have to do all my own appeals. And so I had to do all 3 of those appeals. I had never done an appeal before. And that's why I'm so proud of this case, is because I had never done an appeal when I worked in Maricopa County. You have an appeals division. And then in Yavapai County Attorney's Office, for the most part, there's assistants to help with appeals, and but I didn't have that. I'm expected to do my own appeals, and so that was the first one I'd ever done, and I had some help from some friends who were appeals nerds in other counties, and really it was incredibly challenging because it was 2020, so it was also my kids and I were all at home, and my husband, and we were trying to manage all of that. So doing those 3 appeals, I was very proud of the fact that I was able to do it, and also get through that time and make sure I did a good job. And I think it helped that I had done the case myself, so I had the record and I knew where to find things in the record because I knew when I asked certain questions. But I think that was probably one of the moments when I was most proud of myself in my work.
Thank you. What improvements, if any, do you think should be made to the overall organization or operation of the Yavapai County Superior Court?
think one of the biggest things, and just speaking from my experience, there's a lot lacking when it comes to the juvenile judge does an amazing job, but she doesn't have any help. She does all of the dependency and delinquency cases, and it's really hard to find coverage for juvenile cases, and our calendars are incredibly busy. So if a person isn't quick when they come in to cover for her, we get a 10-minute lunch. So we go from 9 until 1:20, and then have 10 minutes for lunch, and then start again at 1:30. So I think having training that is very specific to juveniles, so that judges can cover juvenile confidently and quickly, and I think that would be helpful. They just updated the electronic system in the juvenile court, so I can't say that anymore. But I think getting us into doing the electronic presentation of evidence would be helpful too. I think in some ways it might be a little bit harder because we're all stuck in our ways there and we like what we do and it works well. But I think just like the other divisions have the electronic evidence, I think getting us into that eventually would be really good.
Mm-hmm. As a Superior Court judge, what would you do if there's a potentially dispositive issue that hasn't been addressed by either party?
Oh, goodness. Dispositive issue that hasn't been addressed by either party. I would ask for further briefing. I think that if there is an issue that's dispositive, a judge can't tell attorneys what to do, but encouraging further briefing, further research might be helpful. Also doing my own research on the issues in the case.
If you could get the Arizona Supreme Court to reconsider any decision, what would it be and why?
I don't have a specific case, but I do think that addressing the issue of children's rights in juvenile court, specifically delinquencies, when it comes to them waiving their rights. I know that's also a constitutional issue, but I do think that if a child can't enter a contract, and this is speaking as a parent as well as an attorney, I think if a child can't enter a contract, they should not be, it's concerning that they would be allowed to waive the right to a parent's presence at when they're being questioned by an officer. That concerns me.
Thank you. Can you identify a court rule? It can be civil, criminal, local, or statewide that you think should be revisited or modified, and why?
Extended jurisdiction. For juveniles who are 18, between 18 and 19, I think that I think it's a fantastic statute. I think that it takes into consideration that the brain doesn't finish developing until around 25. But it could have some more clarity, I think. There's debate regarding whether the admission is when the extended jurisdiction attaches, or whether the it's at disposition. And sometimes that's the same time, but sometimes it's not. And so different counties handle it different ways. And here we handle it, they have to have a disposition prior to turning 18. There was another part of that. That's the main part of that I think could be improved. It's just frustrating sometimes when you get to, when they're really close to 18, and because we handle it at disposition has to happen. I think that there's a lot of cases. I charge all the cases, and so I think that there would be cases that I would have charged to keep in juvenile court if I could have, because of extended jurisdiction.
As a Superior Court judge, what would you do to prepare and get up to speed when you are assigned to a rotation covering an area of law with which you have no or very little prior experience?
Lots of reading. Reading of statutes, reading of rules, asking questions, asking somebody that's done that rotation before. Any CLEs that might be online. Really anything to just kind of get to understand what the process. I've had to do that. I got thrown into juvenile and wasn't aware of all the things I was going to need to know, and I volunteered for it, but I did start it sooner than I expected, and so I kind of had to. My learning curve was pretty high, so I think just reading all the things.
Could you please tell us about a time that you experienced conflict or disagreement with someone in the workplace? What was the situation, and what steps did you take to resolve or move past the issue?
When you say workplace, do you mean like office or like with a defense attorney? Does it matter?
Yeah, either.
Okay. Goodness. I when I was transferring from adult to juvenile, while I was here, I had a case that I had worked really hard on, and I had done an evidentiary hearing. I had spent a lot of time with the case, and we were in staffing, and I tried to speak up, and I wasn't heard, and it was incredibly frustrating. So instead of grumbling about it and grumping about it, I went and talked it through with my supervisor. I do that a lot when I'm upset about something. I will first go to somebody, in this case my supervisor, and I'll say, hey, this is why I'm frustrated. I don't feel like I'm being heard. Am I being unreasonable? One, and two, how do you think I could handle this better? And that was one instance. I've disagreed with my supervisor several times, and I have found stopping, slowing down, and thinking about the ramifications of responding quickly as opposed to waiting 24 hours is very important. Same with defense attorneys. If I disagree with something or I've been frustrated by something, not be petty. I don't like petty. So.
Thank you. That was the last of our questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I think I would be a good fit for a Superior Court judge. I am determined, I'm adaptable, and I am curious. I've spent my life having to adapt to situations that I did not expect. I have my first job ended with my boss dying in a plane crash. So I had to experience that and then find something to do while I tried to find a job. And I had to pay bills, so I worked for an aerial photography company. And I joked that I moved to Dots for a living for about 3 or 4 months before I found another job, because most people interviewed me to find out what happened to my boss. That was the only reason I was getting interviews. And like I said in one of the answers to one of my questions, one of your questions was, I've had to adapt to being thrown into situations. And I know in my application, I indicated I had a couple of things I did when I was in Maricopa County, but I spent about 2 years in charging a grand jury, and a couple of times somebody was sick and they're like, hey, you get to go cover picking a grand jury. I don't know how to do that. So I try to learn on my feet and do what I can to be helpful. I'm determined. I have also spent my life doing things that were hard. And for example, playing basketball, I did not play my first year of college, and then I decided to walk on the next year, confident that I would make the team, and I did. But I was bound and determined to play basketball, and I did, despite people telling me it would never happen. And then when I tore my ACL, I was determined to get back and playing again. I'm a hard worker, and I'm curious. I like to learn about people. I like to learn things. I like to learn new things. It's fun. It's fun to learn people's stories and to learn from people. If you can't learn from people and you aren't teachable, then I find it hard to live life. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and diligence throughout this process, and for everything you've contributed to the legal profession and to the community here in Yavapai County. We will be in touch. Someone from the governor's office will be in touch with you about any next steps as soon as we can, and hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you. I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Can I take this?
Yes. That concludes all the interviews. Thank you all for being here.
That's pretty good. Those are the center. Yeah.